back.
Yeah. Hi, Norrie. Welcome back, mate. How are you feeling after your illness?
2.5 weeks of flu, Gordon. Oh, it's floored me, man. Absolutely floored me. Still got a wee bit, but getting better. But my goodness, that was the mother of all flus. Oof.
Here we are. What is it? 2 weeks almost exactly to the day out from Christmas. And I've had a number of my clients actually have been dropping from this. They're calling it the super flu. Apparently,
Are
it's
they?
much worse. It's much worse and apparently far more infectious than normal. So
Yeah.
you look and sound as if you've been a victim of that one, I think.
It just came upon me, and I thought, you know what? I thought I had COVID, and I thought, yeah, I'll take a test. It wasn't COVID, and then it was just grin and bear it. It was,
Yeah.
oh, you couldn't move, just couldn't move. But anyway, I'm hopefully I'm past it, and Christmas can come, and I'll be all right for that.
Well, at least it happened before Christmas, no, not during it. No. Anyway,
Anyway,
I gather
what's been
you've got,
happening?
yeah, you have a lot of stories for us this morning, I gather, yeah?
Well, there's a couple that popped up yesterday. This kid on Parliament we've got,
Yeah.
Angela Constance, was under pressure to resign from the Tories and the Labour Party on misrepresenting a grouping gangs expert. She misrepresented them. And it just struck me, Gordon, that who's got most to hide in this grooming gangs thing?
Yeah.
Is it the Labour and the Tory party, I wonder? If we take individuals, Peter Mandelson,
Uh-huh.
you've got Keir Starmer named in a lot of them. And in the Tories, the list is endless, going back to
Yeah.
Jimmy Savile. Who's got more to hide in this? And isn't it a case of just trying to shift the blame onto the SNP and onto Angela Constance so that she can take all the rubbish by misrepresenting somebody? It
Well,
stinks of corruption, this, Gordon. It really does.
I agree, and since this story broke the other day, I noticed on certainly on the internet, there have been at least six Labour MSPs and MPs who have been in the news, and some of them actually been charged. One or two of them been charged for either sexual offences or for grooming, or something in connection with young people. So it seems to be endemic across the political classes in the United Kingdom, and I think, as you say, this is a deflection. This is trying to blame the party which isn't actually rife with this, for this very same set of crimes and misdemeanors, and it's laughable, but it's an old trope, an old technique. Blame the other party for what you're actually doing yourself.
Yeah, well, actually, it went nowhere because they didn't have enough support in the Parliament to bring this forward. The Greens and even the Liberal Democrats said it's not furthering the cause of trying to work out who the grooming gangs are and what the
Yeah,
problems are in Scotland. And so it's a waste of time, but it does again, I think, show us how boring and ineffectual the Parliament is when people are dying of not being able to eat. The choice of food in our shops is limited. There's a lot of colour, there's a lot of variety, but there's not good food in our shops. And we've got wind farms going up all the time, etc., etc. Real
yeah.
life doesn't mirror that Parliament. And that's the big problem we've got, Gordon.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you should mention the Parliament, actually, because there's a story which I've been discussing with Colette Walker from the Independence for Scotland party, and Colette had replied to something I'd said about pavement parking, and she showed me some photographs taken by a blind or partially sighted person who's reported this to her, of pavement parking where two cars had parked, not just with wheels on the pavement, but also the entire car on the pavement in this narrow street. And so this blind or partially sighted person with their guide dog was having to walk down the centre of the road for long periods of time to get around these things, putting themselves at risk. Now, the question in my mind wasn't so much about the pavement parking, but because the Scottish Parliament passed legislation making pavement parking an offence, nobody, to my knowledge, has been prosecuted for it. since the legislation came into force. So who's enforcing it? Because it's not the police, it's not the local authorities, although Colette informs me that both have been given the responsibility by the Scottish Parliament for prosecuting people for doing this, and yet nothing seems to be happening. Where are the police? Where are the local authorities?
Well, I think the question should be, how did this position arise? How did we get people parking on the pavement? It's because, Gordon, these houses were built back in the 60s and the 50s. They
Yeah.
didn't have the facility for two cars, which a lot of families do have now, because both people work. And I'll tell you another thing, bus routes don't go down these areas anymore because they're not profitable. If we looked at getting people out of cars into public transport, then we might have a start. But because you've got a system where big companies can chew up and spit out smaller companies so they can get the best routes, then you're not going to solve this problem. Our infrastructure, our transport infrastructure is Victorian. It doesn't go into the schemes and the houses to pick up people and take them to the places they have to go. People are
Yeah.
working different shifts, so it doesn't go at the times they want. And so you've got a problem that people have to buy two cars. Then you get the problem of where do they park them.
Well, this is true, and where I live, of course, in Glasgow, there are massive, enormous so-called sink estates all around the perimeter of the city, and these are former council houses, as we would call them, Norrie, in our day, now called
Mm.
social housing. Many of them, of course, have been purchased by their owners under the Thatcher doctrine of being able to buy your own council house. The problem was, as you pointed out, these estates were designed for people who did not own cars, so the roads are narrower. And normally, as you say, there would have been a bus route going through these estates to get those people to their employment. Nowadays, they all have cars, and because the parking's so bad, the buses simply can't get along those streets. So the routes have now been cut and cut and cut. And so we're left with this legacy of cars jumbled at the sides of the roads on the pavements so that
Mhm.
other cars can get through the wee gaps. And there's something wrong with the way local authorities look at this. If they had their head on the right way round, they could create parking areas, they could narrow pavements, they could make enough space for these cars to park. But they don't do it, and I'm guessing the reason is money. I can't think of any other.
Do you know this, Gordon? I don't know if they can, because in a lot of these areas, the houses are joined so together, there's no space to put a car zone. When I stayed in Hamilton, everybody, bar none, apart from us, we had one car, everybody was T-blocking, monoblocking, and taking away the grass and putting that
Yes.
space for another car to get it off the pavement.
Yeah.
That costs money, and it does a couple of things. It wipes out a whole ecosystem, because if you don't have grass, you don't have places for badgers to go, you don't have places for hedgehogs to go, and so we're losing that ecosystem. And then we're getting this monoblock, rigid grey nonsense, and all our schemes become grey and boring and dull. There's no grass, there's no flowers, there's nothing there anymore.
Of
So
course,
we've been corralled into this system that we have to obey to. The freedoms we've got in this country are non-existent. We have to comply whatever the masses want us to do, and that's where we've got this problem. Because we have to get to work to earn money. We need cars to get to work to make money. And we don't care where they park the car. That's the last thing on our minds. When we park that car, we're in getting some food, getting some rest. It's because
and
it's that kind of problem that it's not been taken care of. And I
I,
guess
I,
the police and the local authorities are saying, well, wait a minute here, they're already hard working. If we find them for this, that's another burden on them.
Yeah, well, in my own sphere of work, that I'm contributing to this, and I'm very aware of the fact that I'm contributing to the problem because I'm training more and more people to drive cars, just simply because that's my occupation. But at the same time, I see an awful lot of, never mind pavement parking, a lot of other road offences being committed every single day, dozens of times a day by ordinary motorists who just ignore rules. And they are ignoring rules, I think, because they believe they can get away with it. because, and I drive something like 12, 15 hours a day on the streets, Norrie, and I don't see a single police patrol car anywhere.
No,
Where are
no.
they? The only time I will see a police car going anywhere is when its blue lights are on and it's blasting through a traffic light, chasing somebody who's committed a crime. So they're obviously prioritizing crime fighting, but there's nobody doing anything about motoring offences. That's why the accident rates are going up, because people are taking risks because they think they can get away with it. They're
Well,
speeding everywhere. Just about
well,
80% of motorists I
do-
see on the road are speeding.
well, getting back to this parking thing, if people have to park on the pavement, I would suggest that they leave spaces between their cars on the pavement so that people can get in and out. Have a look, then go. Have a look, then go. If you've got them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then that's a problem. That's the
Mhm.
problem, because then it makes the stretch on the road much more dangerous and you're there for longer. But again, Gordon, since Thatcher took, and you mentioned Thatcher earlier on, she created these out of town shopping centres where you have to
Yes.
take your car. They hoovered up space as well, and they're charging you now. In Inverness, you have to pay to park your car while you shop. Unbelievable. And so all that space has been taken up by these corporate giants. Wouldn't it be
Yeah.
great if you stayed near an Asda across the road, you could park in their store, but they won't let you
Yes. Yeah.
unless you pay that.
We seem to have
So
followed the American model where everybody drives everywhere because the
mhm,
shops can't be accessed on foot because they're not
that's right.
local anymore. And there are no shopping streets. They're dying. The small shop owners, the grocers, the butcher shops, the bakeries, they're all dying out and ending up in supermarkets now. And as
Yeah.
you say, the markets are out of town, so you have to drive to those. And so everything that we now have to do involves car driving. Otherwise, you just can't get there. And
Yeah. And
even
what's the
that,
most heavily
this
taxed? You'll know
is,
this, Gordon. What's
yeah,
the most heavily taxed thing we pay on? It's our car
and fuel, yeah,
and
both,
fuel.
and insurance.
Yeah.
We are financing a huge money making machine,
Yeah.
which is
That's what it's
simply
all about. And we're all chained to this system of economics where we have to pay taxes on taxes on taxes, on insurance, on your petrol duty, you name it. It's
yeah,
difficult, and that's not even repair work coming onto your car. That's up to you, and you don't
yeah.
get insured for that. You have to pay out your own pocket if your brakes start to fail. Do you know what I mean?
The other, the other thing,
It is a scandal what we're living through, Gordon.
yeah,
And the other thing I was wanting to talk about,
yeah,
moving on from this, is poverty is a disabling factor in all of us. We have to, we're worried sick. And when you worry, you become sick. And when you worry about paying your bills, etc., you become ill. You might not notice it in your everyday demeanour, but in the back of your mind, Gordon, if people are cancelling because of this flu on you, how much does that impact on how much you bring to the house and to pay bills? Don't tell me it doesn't get you thinking and getting you worried, because you wouldn't be normal if you didn't worry about that.
well,
That's
I
what's
try.
happening to us.
Yeah, I try in my own business dealings, Nori, if somebody's sick, I'll not charge them for missing a lesson on the day. I'll try and reschedule them for later in the week if I've got the space. But if I lose 2 or 3 people a week, you're talking a lot of money. We're talking, over 100 quid straight out of my takings for that week. And I don't get it back. I can't get it back later on.
Nope,
So it's a huge loss. And
it
as you
is.
say, it's sick.
So,
And it,
yeah, I mean, this is what we're living in, Gordon. We started off by talking about some motion in the parliament, yet our real lives don't reflect what goes in that parliament. And here's the thing, Gordon, I'm really, really worried about next year's election, because still, apart from a couple of parties, I've taken on a real urgency to get the message out for next year. It's right now we should be hammering, 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 because it won't be long before we're voting. But you've got to make sure this is a an election that is an election for independence. I'm hearing nothing from anyone apart from Liberate Scotland. Nothing. Even Alaba, or I don't know what they're doing. I have no idea where they're going with this. But I would have thought there'd be much more urgency, much more warning shots to the unionist parties. We mean business. This is, and I would expect in the SNP, because latest polls have shown that they're 60% in the polls. If that's the case, they don't need the second vote, Gordon. They don't need it. You should vote something else on the list. Something that'll keep Reform out, something that'll keep Labour out, and that's Liberate Scotland.
The BBC, I noticed, Norrie, has been pushing this narrative that people are deserting the SNP as a party. And they're claiming, and this is a claim that I've seen made on several BBC television programmes, that those SNP voters are migrating to Reform and to the Labour Party. And I think this is utter rubbish. I cannot imagine a single SNP person I know, a voter or a supporter of the SNP, who would ever migrate to Reform, and very few, if any, who would revert back to voting Labour, because Labour has nothing really for independence. It's denying another referendum, and it's done so several times publicly. Nobody in the SNP would ever revert back to voting Labour in Scotland.
No, I don't know what they're trying here. I think there's a big fight going on between the Tories and Reform, and Labour are getting brought into this as well. It could split right down the middle of the Unionist vote, having Reform in. And we could see this sort of smaller blocks of 3, and Liberal Democrats are back on 4. Greens are rising, according to the polls. But we really need to get different people into that parliament. We need to get ISP, we need to get I for Indie, we need to get Sovereignty, we need to get Alaba, for goodness sake, we need to get different people in there, because it will just stagnate into what it's always been since it was incepted. And that is just a talking shop, far away from what the people of Scotland really need. But I would expect an independence party, Gordon, like the SNP, to be laying down a marker, to be laying down what they're going to be doing in this election that's coming up round the corner. It won't be long before me and you are on the night after we're talking about the results. I tell you, it's going to happen like that. That's how time moves. And then where will we be? We had a programme, Gordon, remember, where will we be next year? This time next year. And none of us could, hand in heart, say we'll be nearer independence. We couldn't.
No, because the voting system is so heavily gerrymandered against it. Besides which, you know how you were talking about the fact that the second vote is the one that's most important, because according to the United Kingdom's newspaper polls, the SNP has a huge commanding lead in the first vote, and therefore the papers are saying there's no need to vote SNP in the second vote. Now, the implication of that is they want you to vote for one of the unionist parties. So they're fighting against the smaller independence parties on the list, and they're focusing all their attention on that. And this is where we have to focus our attention on not falling for this nonsense, and certainly not voting for Reform, which is a hyper Tory party, a hyper southeast of England Tory party. It's so far right, it's unrecognisable to people in Scotland as any kind of political party. It seems to be mostly just a racist bunch of ranters who want rid of any migrants from the UK, including those, incidentally, who have leave to stay, who pay taxes and have settled here and had children legitimately and legally. They want them gone as well.
Yep.
And if you vote for Reform in our elections next year in the second vote, that's what you're going to get.
Well, I think the more and more comes out about Reform, and we're not stupid here in Scotland. There are some stupid people who can be conned and given a loud hailer and told to go in the streets, but they're plants. Be careful of them people. But the more that comes out about Nigel Farage and his involvement with the Epstein papers, and the more that his history comes back and is played out, the more he's got nowhere to run. There's only so much that he can say as a right-wing party. And through history, we know, Gordon, that they bring to the table only one thing, and it's about immigration. See, when it comes to housing and health and all the rest of it, they have nothing. The cupboard is bare. And this has happened in France, it's happened in Italy, and the Netherlands as well, where they had right-wing people coming in, parties, and they're spent forcing it because people are now saying that, oh, it wasn't the immigrants, it wasn't, it's you. You're the problem because you have got no ideas, and that's what happens when right-wing parties trying to get in.
And
It's
of
a
course,
I don't think that we should be worried about the BBC. Honestly, their figures are tumbling down like snow off a dike. And by the way, they just got rid of three very important broadcasters on their books. Ian Anderson being one of them, a guy I liked. He used to play all kinds of music. Roddy Hart is another one. These guys played up and coming Scottish bands, folk bands, trad bands, you name it.
yeah,
Give them an outlet. That's gone, gone,
yes.
gone.
Yeah,
Why is
all,
it
all,
gone?
all Scottish culture has been expunged from BBC output now. You might get one programme made by the BBC, which is a flagship for their drama. So you might get something like Shetland, for example, which is a good series, admittedly, but it's the only thing that the BBC really bangs the drum for in Scotland is Shetland.
Yeah, but it's done very carefully, Gordon.
Oh,
The
yeah.
script is looked at meticulously, and I tell you what, it's a production company that does all the work. Then the BBC just put it out in their channel. Don't be fooled. We're getting as much or as little as they allow us.
I think as little is actually more to the point. The BBC has this massive greenhouse built at Pacific Quay with this huge set of massive dishes on the top that give you the impression that there's this almighty sort of television production organization making lots and lots of Scottish content. But we know it's not.
It's never
Um,
made any Scottish content. It's just a it's a shibboleth. It's a place where there's I've worked in there, and it's big, vast, empty spaces,
yeah,
with very, very little going on. But it's been big. It's been big built like that to show you it's a monster and it's
yeah,
in charge. And this is the big place, and it soaks up all our talent, all our talent. BBC Alba on the Natrads festival at Aberdeen recently. You know this. This is the time where the Scots Traditional Music Association get their own awards and buoy themselves up. Guess who was there filming it? The BBC.
yeah,
The BBC putting out an Alba, you know? So you can't do anything, but you've got this big hand of Britain on top of it,
yeah,
making sure that what they want broadcast will be put out. And if somebody, musicians generally, like artists and poets, are very outspoken, they'll cut that. They'll cut those bits out and just give the bits where the bands are going, whoopee, I won a prize. That's all
yeah.
you get. It's not nailed down. This is where we should go, and this is our future. This is where we want to be. None of that, Gordon. So, at every angle you get, whenever the BBC have got a finger in that pie, you can be sure that it's dumbed down.
Yeah, it's simplified. It's also probably sanitized so it is apolitical and completely neutral towards the union, at the very least, if not waving the flag for it. And we all know that, talking of flags, there has been this massive outbreak of saltire flying in poor areas in central Scotland. And these actually, everybody was surprised to learn, were put up by reform activists who
Mm.
have been trying to appropriate the Scottish flag as their emblem of their sort of ambition in Scotland in the next general election for Holyrood. I don't think it's worked. Honestly, think it's backfired enormously on them. People know who put those flags up. They like the flags, but they know full well why Reform put them up there.
But it's a sign, Gordon, of the shape of things to come. We've
Right?
got a World Cup coming up, and
Oh yeah,
Scotland are very much an integral part of that. That is something you can't airbrush out. The British establishment cannot airbrush that out. But what they can do is try and make us look as bad as they possibly can. Back in '79, they rubbished Ali MacLeod. They didn't. They didn't get a hotel that was fit enough for a tourist, never mind a football team. So there was
yeah.
noise and there was a half built football team for the supporters. Where did I find this information? Willie Johnson's autobiography. Read it. You'll find out how the players went and arrived there. When they played their first game, they were like half-shut knives. Why? Because up until that point, Gordon, we knew that Scotland was a happy place. You cannot control people who are happy. You cannot say, oh, but wait a minute, put fear into them. They're too happy. They're too content. Their country's on the march. We know in 74 that the Macron report was written. We didn't know that at the time, but it was written.
Big secret.
SNP had 11 MPs, the highest they've ever had. It's Scotland's oil was the banner. Scotland are going to the World Cup. But guess what's coming round the corner in 79 that would put a roadblock? They could not lose this. So what do? They make sure Scotland can't get further in sport, and then they deflate the population. And when the population is then deflated by a measure of disappointment, shame, and all those things, then what do you expect them to do in 79?
And of course, once Mrs. Thatcher was in place, what did she do to our industries?
But what did they do at the football, Gordon? I'm talking about, what did they do? This is what they're and we're getting back to this thing about what you said about Scotland, the flag being taken. If we go to the World Cup and we get these people in amongst us, these right-wing idiots flying our flag, and then what we see is windows getting smashed, bars getting looted, and there's a Scotland flag on them. This is the next ploy, Gordon, in the attack on Scotland, because we know this. Because in Germany, when we were beaten 5-1, no Scotland, no party. You can't upset us. We're still here. We got beaten in every single game, but not one arrest was made. How do we get the Scots to be really riled? We'll film a Scottish flag being smashed in a window and wrecking cars and all the rest of it. And that's what'll happen. Now, mark my words.
It's quite literally the definition of a false flag event. It's exactly that. And that is exactly what that is. It's a false flag event, something which is staged for the cameras and is going to make you feel ashamed of your country, going to make you feel small.
They're going to rubbish our flag.
Yeah, I agree. And once that was done, then Thatcher comes in and sells off all your heavy industries, so you all become unemployed. And you undergo a 20-year struggle with hyper austerity as a result. And the end result of that was we eventually climbed out of that by ourselves, not because of the UK, but despite it. And we got to where we were up until recently with a recovering economy, with a mixed economy with new industries. And now we're back in a crisis again, which Keir Starmer is continuing. He's continuing austerity. It's a choice. It wasn't necessary at all. And when you have a bank that can actually create money to lend to yourself, you don't need to tax people so much. You don't need hyper austerity. It was a choice, and it's a choice to keep everybody in their place again. And Starmer is as much a part of the establishment as any other politician. And I'm ashamed to say it, for years I was a Labour man, I was a trades unionist, I represented people in my workplace, and I was proud of that. And then Thatcher happened. And then my mind changed, because after Thatcher we've had Labour, Tory governments, and they've all been the same. And they have all been anti-Scottish. They've all been keeping us down ever since.
Well, I hate to say it, Gordon, but I've been SNP all my life, and I'm not SNP anymore, because the exact same reasons you just gave. I cannot continue to support a party that supports free ports. I cannot support a party that gives the red light to these masses of houses getting built all over the place. I can't. Yeah. Again, that party resembles nothing to what's happening outside of them and their party. Somebody's trying to call me. Honestly, I just want a political party that says, I'm with you. What's your issues? We'll take it to the Parliament. I don't want this GRR stuff. I couldn't care. about it. I want independence, because after independence, we can take things into our own hands. We've said this for the last 10 years. This is why we want independence. And still, the SNP will not listen. And I fear for next year. I don't know what's going to happen. I think apathy
Well,
will be the big winner, and
actually,
that'll be on.
I know you feel pretty bad about next year, but I have the opposite opinion. I feel quite buoyant about the result next year. I think we're going to have a big majority. Yes, the SNP is probably going to be fairly successful in the first vote. It's the second vote that will matter. And if we basically shut out all of these unionist parties, especially Reform, and vote only for pro-independence alternatives, whoever that may be, I don't really care. But what matters is the number of pro-independence people that we elect. Now, okay, it's not going to move the dial closer to independence, but what it does do is it lifts people's mood because they can see there is a groundswell of opinion for independence. It's evident in the voting. Whether the voting leads to independence or not is a demonstration of will of the people in huge numbers. That can't be denied. It can't be swept under the carpet. They can try to minimize it, but it doesn't alter the fact that a big majority of people voted for independence only parties. Which party it is doesn't matter too much. I have to say, because I have some fairly close association with the ISP, and having met and talked to various members of it, that they are primarily a pro-independence party, first and foremost. The other items on their list of issues that they want to address if they get into Holyrood next year are the same as everyone else's: education, housing, the NHS, and so on. Poverty, fixing that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But other parties, as you say, need to put independence at the top of their policy list, not somewhere further down. The SNP seems to be fighting this election on just local issues. They haven't really got wired into it. Mr. Swinney said a good few things about how we could be more empowered with independence because we would have control over all of our natural resources. And yet he never actually outlines what action he would take to get control back of those resources.
We
There's
can't,
nothing.
because he's just that's the party of, or this is the party of Freeports, Gordon.
Yeah.
Where's your resources at that point, where you give public money into private industry so that they can pay low wages and have their own rules? It's bizarre, and we've spoken about this for years.
Yep.
Another thing is, Gordon, I don't know if you've been watching, but the Operation Steak Knife is an Irish,
Yeah.
a look at Ireland,
Yeah.
an IRA, and the guy that was in the middle at the top of the IRA, and they didn't even know he was there. They didn't even know he was a double agent. And they're looking at what he did and how he got ordinary Irish people convicted of jail. Do you know there's 6 people, I think it's 6 or 8 people in British jails on hunger strike right now, but you'll never hear about it. They're 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 campaigning against the atrocities and the genocide in Gaza, but nothing's been said about them. They're on the critical list, exactly the same as Ireland when people were in cells dying, hunger
Yes.
strikes. We still didn't know about it. We were watching the football. We were looking at the politics. There's a
Gaslighting.
hope. There's a hell. Another thing, but when you were talking there, God, about what we should do and how we can be buoyant about this, that, and the next thing, it struck me that we know these elections can be rigged quite easily. Gordon,
Hmm.
they're not counting the elections till the day after.
Yes, they want to keep the ballot boxes somewhere secure for 24 hours before the count.
And
Now
guess what'll happen?
it's an opportunity for ballot stuffing. I mean, it's so obvious, and they're so open about it
So
as
how
well.
can we trust the system?
Yeah, and
How
yet
can we trust it?
they're actually advertising that that's what they're going to do, which is incredible. It just shows you just how arrogant and how confident they are that they can get away with this kind of thing.
Well, now that
Uh,
you've been reminded of this, Gordon, are you still confident that we can get the vote we want?
well, that's the only fly in the ointment. I mean, the question is, are they actually going to do it, or are they just threatening to do it?
They will do it. They will do it. The
Well, if they
Westminster system writes the rules. Gordon, who would have thought? Who would have thought that you could be jailed for saying that Israel is a genocidal state? You could be
yeah,
jailed for that. They make the rules.
isn't
They
it
can do
funny that
anything they want.
you can
We have no.
criticize?
We are powerless.
Yeah, you can criticize the UK government out loud anywhere, but if you criticize the Israeli government, you get jailed. It's astounding. Why? I mean,
Somebody once said not so long ago that Israel gets more representation in the House of Commons than Scotland ever did.
and of course, there are the Friends of Israel within that parliament in London. I don't think we have. Do we have that in Holyrood as well, Norrie?
Well, Angus Robertson was cuddling up to the Israelis.
That's true. He did, yeah. Although there isn't, I don't think there's an actual Friends of Israel organisation in the Scottish Parliament, but certainly Robertson has very clearly aligned himself with Israel on a couple
Oh
of
yeah,
occasions to think of. So, but is he the only one?
we don't know. We don't know. But I know fine that Anas Sarwar would go against his own religion to further his own political cause.
Yeah,
That baffles me. You know, fellow Muslim babies getting burned and a yellow gas, Gordon. Can you imagine that getting into your lungs and burning from the outside in
you don't need
inside
you
out?
don't need to be gassed. You just need to be in a building when it gets
I know,
bombed.
I know. But
Must-
then, but Sarwar, when he goes to his mosque and prays, what does he pray for?
I wonder. Yeah, who
You know,
knows?
it's money, it's corruption, it's power, it's greed. All those things, all those nasty things are controlling us. And the sooner we accept that, and the sooner we think we've got to do something about it at a local level. I
Hmm.
remember before I got my lurgy, I was at a meeting with Save Loch Ness, and it
Yes, I
was
mentioned
full of
this.
people, jam packed. Gordon, absolutely amazed that nothing was being done. This massive company building a massive dam in Loch Ness. It's going to scar the place. It's going to have ecological damage beyond repair. It's got people worried. It's got people concerned. It's got people frightened that they may have to do something they don't want to do, i.e., physical action. It's all very well talking, but now's the time to do something. And I
Now's the
don't
time.
know what that is. I don't know what that is, Gordon. But I
Now's the
tell
time.
you, we're at that stage where people are saying, if the locals can't control or take care of their own area, who can? Because if you trust Kate Forbes, you've got no chance. If you trust the Freeport's mafia, you've no chance. It's the ordinary people on the street that are now fed up with wind farms all over the place. They're fed up with
Yeah,
fish farms right down the road in the trees, putting out their stuff. And it stinks to high heavens, Gordon. They're taking
yeah,
our trees. They're building houses in floodplains. Something's going to have to stop.
yeah. I
Something's
mean,
going to have to happen.
Scotland's Highlands were denuded of trees for sheep farming, and now they're denuding the bare hills of sheep for wind farming.
It's the last
What's
of the
next?
trees that we're losing. It's the
Yeah,
last of the trees.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
it, you're right. It's a barren wasteland. It's a desert out there when you go for a walk. And now we've got people, mountaineers, climbers, Monroe baggers. They're all going up because they want to escape the trudgery they're in. So they go to the hills and they try to escape. And what do they see? Wind farms everywhere. They
yeah.
can't. Nobody can escape anymore from anything. It's
We
on you.
actually, if my memory serves correctly, we have over 7,000 wind turbines at the moment, and we have something like 240 hydroelectric dams in the Highlands alone. Those were the numbers I looked at recently. 240 dams, 7,000 wind turbines, and what benefit do they give the local communities? None, not a thing, nothing. They have to put up with the construction, they have to put up with the traffic, they have to put up with the destruction of the local environment, and nobody asks them for their permission. Who owns the land? Probably multinational corporations that have bought the estates and are making money out of them by clearing the trees so that wind farms can go up and they can make an income from it for themselves. It's not going to the local economy. If there is, it's in a tiny trickle of a handful of little jobs on those estates, managing the wasteland for these foreign national companies that own it.
Yep.
It-
But
It's
how
Britain.
did it come? How did it come to this, Gordon? How does somebody say, right, I'm going to build my turbines on your ground? Who owns that ground? And the first trail takes us to is estates. Find
Yes.
out who is. Why are these estates all over the bloody place, and who owns them? It's not you or me, Gordon. They're not.
Well,
They're not a community group.
about 40% of the land mass in the Highlands is owned by 250 people or
Yep.
corporate. They're
Or
not Scottish.
Forestry Commission. They own quite a lot.
The Forestry Commission is a British quango.
I know.
It's not Scottish. I wish it were Scottish because they might actually protect the forests if they were, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not. It's
True.
like Police Scotland. They're not Scottish either. They're overseen by the UK. So we
Yep.
don't even have, although we say we have our own laws, and according to our constitution, our law prevails here, the police obey diktats from the south. And you'll notice that virtually every Scottish chief of police has been English. Almost all of them, except one that I know of, over the last 50 years or so.
Yep.
So nothing that we do in Scotland is ever ours. It's
No.
all owned or run by people from the south or outside of Scotland, or it's owned by them. And the local people, the villagers who live nearby, they might own their own homes. They might own their little patch of gardening, and they might feel like a community in their village, but everything around them is owned by somebody else and being developed by some corporation. They're trapped in
Well,
this.
do you know, it the question I was trying to put was when we find out who owns the estates, then we know who our enemy is. When we know who's behind this company that's wanting to put up a power station in Loch Ness, when we get to find out who they are, then we can identify our opponent. It's not because the problem is if Loch Lomond, sorry, I always think they missed a trick by saying they're against Flamingo Land. Who's behind Flamingo Land? If you
Mm.
bring that to the attention of people and you bring out people that you might not expect, i.e., from political parties who are involved with this, then you can make a better target for yourself. But
Well,
we
remember,
don't.
the object of the exercise, as far as the British state is concerned, is to make Scotland the same as England, to make it as British as England appears to be. So they bring in all of these industries from south of the border and outside, force them upon everybody, so that Scotland seems to be the same as the rest of the UK. And it's all about making us as bad or worse, preferably worse than the UK. There was one other piece of news, I don't know if you caught this week, that there was a serious radioactive leak in Dounreay last week. It was hushed up for days and days and days, and they
Filming all the time.
still will not say exactly how much radioactive material was released into the environment and how it's kept secret. But the people of Dounreay have only just found out about it, and many of those people might actually work in that particular industry or in that plant, and they might not even know what happened. When you're not even telling your own employees what's happening in their place of work, there's something badly wrong. From a safety viewpoint at the very least.
This is happening on a grand scale all over the world, Gordon. The Bhopal thing, you remember that in India where people were killed? That was hushed up, and but there was multiple casualties. I've told you already. Up in the inner Minch, up at Gairloch, the fishing boats and the tourist boats were told to take a rest where they did their nuclear training. This is NATO. We're up in the north of Scotland. And when
Yes.
the guy took his boat back, all the kelp and the seaweed at the side of the water was black and blue. There was a bluey tinge to it as well. He says that's not natural. All the birds couldn't get the fish because the fish had gone scarpered. The noises of the nuclear upset the migrating whales. They went away scarpered. So now you've got, on a desert scale, in the water, there's
Yeah,
nothing there. And before he takes you out on his boat, you'll say, by the way, we're just going for a trip in the water. There's not much to see. And that's because
because the wildlife
nobody knows, not even
destroyed.
the locals know about what's happening.
No, I mean, I used to live by the seaside and I grew up there, and I've seen the results of Britain, or England as Britain, forcing us to accept industries right on the shoreline. In one case, a giant oil terminal was built on a massive area of sand flats, which was a protected environment for seabirds.
Mhm.
And the sand dunes were bulldozed, and they built this massive iron ore terminal at the time, which then shut down because the steel industries were shut down by Thatcher. And then it lay idle for decades, couldn't do anything. Then they turned it into an oil terminal. I
Yep.
don't even know if that's still going. Then they tried a coal port. Not sure that worked either. So they built this thing for no reason.
Yeah.
They didn't far enough ahead, and nobody got a choice. And we as villagers, we went out and lay down in front of the bulldozers. That's what we did because there wasn't anything else to do. And the people in Loch Ness are probably going to have to do something similar in order to get anything out of this, to get
Well,
any concession out of it.
well, just taking sound bites in my area, people are really, really annoyed, very angry, and there's no police station here, Gordon, and so there's scope to do a lot. And I think we're at the stage now where it's talk. We've been talked, but we haven't been heard. We've viewed our discretion and our annoyance at things getting built around us with no particular reason. So it might be the time now for action. And I don't know what kind of action that will be, but I tell you, people are up to there. They can't afford to pay their bills, and yet it seems that people are taking the one thing that doesn't cost much for them, and that's their fresh air and their views. The Highlands of Scotland should be for everybody. When you walk out here, Gordon, sometimes before all this happened, you could walk out and just think, at least this is beautiful. But now you're looking at wind farms and you're looking at big lorries trundling away all these logs to fit these wind farms in. You're looking at all these new developments, and you're thinking, you go down the way. And that's
Yeah,
what,
your
and
moods.
that's where they want us to be.
Yeah, powerless and unable to do anything about what they're doing to us. Yeah,
Yep.
they don't want you to have any power. They don't want you to even make a sound. They want you just to acquiesce and give up, basically. That's what this is about. And the entire process that's being used on Scotland at the moment is designed to make us give up. People often ask me why I bother doing this, because nothing's happening. And I say because it's worthwhile, because the actual goal of achieving independence is so beneficial. The cost benefit is so enormous. It's worth doing, even if it's a slim chance of success. I'm not going to stop doing this. I'll probably keep doing this until either I die or it's achieved, or both. I mean, eventually it will be achieved, but it will only be achieved if people keep taking this kind of step, making these noises and actually saying these things and getting the news out. Because if we don't do it, the BBC is going to flood everybody with more propaganda, more gaslighting, and it's all you better know. It's not better together anymore. It's not you better know.
I know. The thing is, when we've went through 2014 and we got all the Better Together stuff, and even at that time we thought this is a bit outrageous, but a lot of people bought it, and then regretted it only a year later. So you can't try and convince a nation that we're better together after that. So they've got to move on to their next stage and their next stage. And that is to rubbish the Scotland flag, to rubbish Scotland as a nation in the world, because we've built up this beautiful thing where, you know, no Scotland, no party. We don't care. We're going to bring peace and joy. They're going to put the spokes in that, and make us feel bad about ourselves. And this is a step-by-step, Gordon, attack on the Scottish psyche. It's happened since Scotland became a nation, and it's happening since more and more since we've discovered oil.
Of course.
It's been a curse to Scotland because it's attracted all the venom and the rats and the stinking globalists to come to our country. And nuclear as well. They were too damn scared to put it in their own backyard. We'll put it in Scotland. They don't care.
Yeah, Wales and Scotland have more nuclear plants than England has, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. And the Dounreay plant, incidentally, was always classified as experimental. We were lab rats. Dounreay wasn't just there to generate power, it was there to experiment on nuclear power. And the people up there didn't matter because they were so far away from London. Well, they couldn't really have been any further away from London, really.
I know.
So, yeah, we're used as a dumping ground, as a place to put things that nobody in England wants, and we're expected just to shut up and take it and not say anything about it and not take any action politically or otherwise about it. And if we do that, we might as well all just give up right now and accept whatever's dished out to us,
Well, we have to do something, or else we'll end up like Gaza. We're expecting the world to come to a Gaza's aid, but because Israel's pumping, look what can happen to people, Gordon. And I'm not trying to scare the horses. Well, maybe I am. But if they can do that to these people, they can do it anywhere in the world. And they've done it everywhere in the world. They can take people out.
The history of Palestine and Gaza and Israel was created by the British state. Britain ran Palestine.
I know the history.
Over. And then the Americans helped to found the state of Israel, and they've been propping it up ever since. So the reason why Israel still features so heavily in British politics is because America is actually funding it. And therefore, because the UK is so wedded to the United States, it just follows along. And so we get all this stuff going on about Gaza. So it's inevitable. It's inevitable because of the history and because of the connection between the UK and the United States in this thing, and it's going to go on forever.
It's even if you ignore the history, Gordon, for a second, we're talking about a culture, a new economic culture, where 4 companies own most of the world's wealth, and they dictate what food we eat, even. And even broadband is glass, right? It's sand made into glass strips. It's the cheapest form of communication. Copper was very expensive to mine it, but this sand and make it into glass, and they charge us a fortune for it. And we dutifully go because we can't do without. They've got us dancing in strings. And we've got to think, where does it end, Gordon? Where does capitalism explode? Does it ever explode?
I've said this a few times, Norrie. Capitalism collapses when they run out of people to exploit.
Yes, but there's always going to be people.
Yeah, there are always people in the world who are poor enough to be exploited. Africa is a case in point. South America is another one. And these are the places where capitalism is still making huge amounts of money. And it's exploiting local people. It's paying them pittances. It's playing fast and loose with safety and health. And then it clears out and leaves a mess behind it, as it does everywhere. And, it's a rapacious disease that's entire policy is to make money for 1% of the world's population.
And I tell you one thing, Gordon, I can't remember if I said this on this show or not, but I found out who's behind Springfield, this building company that's put up 100 houses in Drumnadrochit. Asset managers. 2 big asset managers fund that building company.
And who invests their money with asset managers with pension funds? And it's pension funds that own most of the wealth. And they also own most of the global debt, or at least a big portion of it, at least a third of it, is owned by pension firms. So all of the things that are happening in the world are happening at the behest of people who run pension funds.
But here's the thing, Gordon. What do those asset managers know about Drumnadrochit? Nothing. Absolutely. They don't need to know anything. They don't need to know anything. All they need to know is, do they get a return? Do they get cash? Do they get money back? And that is a killer. We're putting so much store onto who gets the money. This bit of paper that says you've got more than I have. What on earth, from cradle to grave, does a whole load of notes do me? I can't eat them. I can maybe burn them. I can't even burn them now, Gordon. They're not made of paper. So what can I do with them? You've got more numbers than I have. So I need more numbers than you, but that doesn't matter if your environment's getting trashed because I've still got more than you and I'm better than you. The system's a mess, Gordon. And you know this, the guy at the top of all this, Springfield, is a guy in Qatar, and he sits there. And he sits there on an interview with another lackey. How did you make your billions, trillions? Oh, I was born in a village and da. My dad taught me all this good stuff and garbage. He doesn't care about Drumnadrochit. He doesn't care about anywhere else in Scotland where these houses are getting built. He's just looking for his return. And as long as he gets his return, he's happy. But we're all miserable because we've got to look at the damn things. We've got to live with them. He doesn't. And that's where I get really angry, Gordon. These people have no idea.
There's a well-known axiom in business, which is that there's no sentiment in business. There just isn't. Nobody cares about anything except the bottom line. There's something wrong with businesses that don't take into account the human beings that work for them, or the environment in which they're situated, or whether the planet that supports their industries is going to just eventually be so toxic and poisoned that nobody will be able to make money out of anything anymore, and nobody will have anything to eat because they've used it all up.
You said something interesting where corporations, capitalism goes where people have resources. And I remember being over in Madeira. Madeira means wood, actually. It's wood. That's what it means in Portuguese. And they had eucalyptus and they had cork and growing everywhere. Back in the day, in the 16th century, cork was a much sought after wood for wine bottles. So they stripped the whole of Madeira of its trees, all of it. And in the bars and in the places that show you what it was like and how they've regenerated over the years. And they hate capitalism because what it's done to them and what happened before. And they lost all their people because if you haven't got your trees, you haven't got jobs. If you haven't got jobs, you haven't got the food. If you haven't got the food, you haven't got life. And so even back then, Gordon, they couldn't care less. And you know what they did when all the trees were gone? They moved on somewhere else.
Yeah, they start all over again in another place and exploit a new place and the new people. And that is what businesses are for, making money. They don't exist to make or sell things. They exist to make money for a very, very small percentage of the population.
Correct. Well, Gordon, next week, I've got some information about. Have you ever thought about this? I'll bring it into the mix next week. Have you ever thought when a soldier kills a baby through his sights, what happens to that soldier after? What are the psychological effects? What happens to them?
Yeah.
Well, got amazing correspondence with a journalist who's telling me from Thailand that the Israeli government take them out of the army and put them over somewhere nice in the sun, the sea, and all the rest of it. But the problem doesn't end there, Gordon, because that man is now a wreck. He can't live with what he's done. And I'll give you more on that next week. I'll get my details, and I'm going to be talking to another guy more about this. But it's interesting. What happens to somebody who shoots a child? What happens to his head, and where does he go after that?
And it's not just children, it's killing anybody as a psychological effect.
Children is the biggest one, Gordon.
I agree.
It's a huge thing when you can see through your sights and you miss the target and you blow the arm off and the blood's so you're not getting a clean strike. You're putting agony onto that child's life. It's defenseless. You're shooting at a defenseless person.
Children are probably the most vulnerable in wars, and they're also the ones who are victims mostly, are children. Women and children generally are the first victims in wars, not the fighters. It's the collateral damage. It's the buildings that blow up to get one fighter and they take out several families that were living nearby. That's
Yeah, but
the basic of it.
yeah, but this isn't a one-on-one, Gordon. This is one-on-one. You can bomb a whole place and not see the carnage. But what I'm talking about here is through your sights, and you can
Yeah.
see it. What comes back to you when you pull that trigger?
I can't
It's
imagine.
interesting. The psychological interest is fascinating. But I'll bring that next week, because there's a couple of things to it, and it's very ugly. But if you want to know the whole truth, you need to know what's happening in the world and why Thailand tourists are staying away from certain hotels and certain bars, because there's
Well,
really.
considering British politicians are actually saying out loud that Britain should prepare itself for war, you start worrying. Anyway, Norrie, we have run out of time, I'm afraid. Thanks to all our viewers for sticking with us through. If you've watched the program all the way through, we'll be back again next Friday, Norrie, I hope, with you 100% recovered.
Oh, I hope so, Gordon. This has been a nightmare, and I don't want to dwell on it. I'm past the worst, but my goodness, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And the last thing, Gordon, who put this flu in the system? Who put it there?
Can we blame the British government for this?
Do you know what? Yeah, we can. I tell you what, in the skies, something's getting dropped, and it's not clouds. There's something getting dropped upon us, Gordon. And I tell you, the older I get, the more cynical I get. Why are we all down with a flu? Why is there no cure for this? Like cancer. Why is there no cure for all these things? Why are we still living?
Why are the vaccines for flu not working on it? That's the other question. Because they're specific to one type of flu, and they have to guess which one it will be. Anyway, listen, Norrie, we'll have to go. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us. We'll be back again next Friday at 9:30. But that's it today from Hodna Jacket. We'll see you next time.
See you next week, folks. All the best, Gordon. Cheers now.
Okay, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on
Oh,
the show.
yes. And all the rest of the good stuff. Bye, Gordon.
Yeah. Bye for now.